Hello, good evening. My name is Catherine Kaplan. I work with SEB Housing, and this is the information session for the 15 affordable rental housing units at Ezio Place in Peabody, Massachusetts. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the available units. We're also going to cover the application, eligibility, and lottery process, and what to expect after the lottery itself. If you have any questions during this session, you're encouraged to either type them into the Zoom chat or you can unmute yourself. You were muted as you came into the room, so just be aware of that. This is a live session, so it's being recorded and will be saved after the fact to SEB Housing's YouTube channel. So I have slides here, as you can see, and you can take a look at those as I'm talking, but I'm going to be referencing a lot of other things that are in the information packet as well. If you have any questions after tonight's session, the best way to reach out to us is by emailing info@sebhousing.com. If you prefer to call us, that's fine as well. And the call, the main number is right here for rental properties. So if you have any logistical issues with hearing me or anything like that, just let me know as well during the session. So just want to give you a little bit of background information on who we are. To start, SEB Housing is an off-site affordable housing consulting group. So we are not the on-site management team or the leasing office for Ezio Place. We've been hired by the developer to market the affordable units, to conduct the information session tonight, collect and review applications, to determine applicants' eligibility for the affordable housing program, and then to run the lottery as well. So in the initial stages of this process, we will be your main contact rather than the leasing office. But then later on in the process, you'll be in touch with the leasing team who will be your main contact at that point. So there's two broad steps in the process. The first being to apply for the affordable housing program. And that's the step during which you'll be in touch with SEB Housing. We'll be able to answer any questions you have on the affordable housing program, and we will review your application and supporting documentation, which includes, information, including your assets, taxes, income, that sort of thing. So if you're eligible, you'll be entered into the lottery and you'll be given a position on a waiting list. The second step in the process would be when you're in touch with the leasing office for your lease eligibility. So the lease eligibility screening is separate from the SEB housing screening, which is for the affordable housing program. The lease screening by the leasing office could include credit, background, rental history check, that sort of thing. Once you're approved, you'll be working with the leasing office to reserve and lease an apartment. So our website is on the screen right now as well. If you haven't checked it out already, sebhousing.com has a page specific to Ezio Place. So if you click on affordable housing opportunities, when you get to our page and you select I want to rent, since this is a rental opportunity, that's where Ezio Place will be listed. And it will, once you get to that Ezio Place specific page, it will have a downloadable version of the application and the information packet. And the information packet contains most of the material I'm going to be covering during this session. I won't have time to cover everything in the packet though, so we do still recommend that if you're interested in applying for this property, that you take a look at the information packet, even if you attended this session. So you can choose, if you choose to apply for the units at Ezio Place, you can submit your application in one of several ways. The first being to email or scan it to us at info@sebhousing.com. You can also fax it. The fax number is listed on the first page of the application. You can send it by regular mail to our office in Needham. You can also drop it off at the secure drop box if you're in the Needham area. It is secured and it is available 24 hours a day. We check it each day as well. So whichever one of those options is most convenient for you, we encourage you to get your application in early if you're interested. It is fairly lengthy, as you will see when you review the application. There's a lot of supporting documentation that you're going to need to submit with it. And we'll talk a lot more about that during this presentation tonight. And if you have any questions again during it, please just let us know so we can help you through that process. Applications are due by 2 p.m. on December 19th, so just a little bit less than a month away. And applications have to be postmarked by that date in order to be considered for the lottery. You do not need to be a resident of Peabody to apply for the lottery. There are several units that will have local preference for residents of Peabody, and we'll discuss that later on, but it should not deter you from applying for the units. All right, so some background information itself on the units. They do have a website that I have up here, and you can check out the website for a little bit more about amenities, floor plans, that sort of thing, but have kind of the breakdown here for you of how many, the rent for each apartment, how many bathrooms, square footage, and all of that. But Ezio Place is a 60-unit luxury multifamily community. It's going to be located at 2 Hotel Avenue in Peabody. 15 of the apartments are going to be affordable, and that's what we're doing this process for. They're going to be made available to households making less than 80% of the area median income in the Boston area, which is where Peabody falls. The units feature in-unit laundry, granite countertops, oversized windows. The property itself has a roof deck, and there's quick access to Route 1 and some of, a lot of restaurants on the North Shore. And there is also a club room with games, 24-hour fitness center, and a heated garage. And so the rents at the property are listed on your screen now. They are less than the rents that would be charged for market rate tenants within the development. So there are affordable 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments being offered. There are 10 1-bedroom apartments that are affordable, and they have 797 square feet, and they're going to rent for $2,049. 2 of those 1-bedroom apartments that are affordable are considered disabled accessible, and they have features for persons with mobility impairments. There are also 4 2-bedroom affordable apartments, and those feature 1,063 square feet, and the affordable rent will be $2,278. One of those 2-bedroom units is considered disabled accessible, and again, will have features for persons with mobility impairments. There's one affordable 3-bedroom apartment that has 1,329 square feet, and the rent will be $2,494. Tenants will be responsible for all utilities. The heating and hot water is gas, cooking is electric. And this particular affordable housing opportunity is not subsidized housing. So the affordable rent amounts are not set based on a family's income or individual income or financial circumstances. So this means that the rent will not change it will not change if your income changes. These are set rent amounts. They have been set using a formula that's based on HUD, so the Housing and Urban Development area median income for the Boston area, which again is where Peabody falls. The rents are set. That formula keeps in mind that rent should be affordable for households making up to 80% of area median income. The rent amounts may increase once per year, and this typically occurs when HUD revises their area median income amounts each spring around April of every year. Advance notice would always be given to tenants whenever a rent increase occurs. They're usually modest, between $25 and $75 if the rent increases, but the rent will never increase in the middle of your lease term. So the affordable units at Ezio Place were selected by the owner and were already approved by the state, so by the Department of Housing and Community Development, and they're representative of the units in the building as a whole, which means that they are not the smallest units. They're not all tucked away in one location in the building, and they're not identifiable as being affordable in any way from the outside. It is possible that there will be more interested and eligible applicants than available units. So that's why we're having this lottery process, so that the applicants with household income at or below 80% of the area median income are able to rent these apartments. We're going to talk about the income limits in just a few minutes as well. But before I do that, we've covered a lot of logistical information, a little bit about an overview about the unit. Just a reminder again, if you have any questions, you can go type them into the chat or unmute yourself. All right, so in the information packet, there are 4 eligibility requirements. And those are also listed on page 4 of the info pack. The first is income and assets of the household must be at or below 80% of area median income. So the 80% limits are listed on your screen right now. And as you can see, we have up to a 6-person household because 3-bedroom units are the largest units being made available here. So the amounts are listed up here. For example, the 1-person household, the maximum income that your household could have is $78,000, and it goes up from there. The second eligibility criteria to keep in mind is that household priority is going to be given based on household composition. So when you fill out your application, you will have indicated which household type you are eligible for, either type 1, type 2, or type 3. So for example, if your household type is tied to the priority you will have on the wait list for specific units. So for example, a type 2 household might apply for a 3-bedroom unit, but you should be aware, if you are a type 2 household applying for a 3-bedroom unit, you're going to have the type 3 households are going to have priority for that 3-bedroom unit. So you would be below everyone on the waiting list that is a type 3 household. And the idea really is that household types, are given to each applicant in order to give larger households priority for larger units. So that these larger units are not always occupied by a household that might not require that space. Page 7 of the information packet has a lot more information on household types as well. The third eligibility criteria is that you cannot own a home upon move-in. So if you own a home now, it needs to be sold prior to leasing the unit. You can still apply, but you would need to have already sold sold your home before you sign a lease for an apartment at Ezio Place. And then the fourth criteria doesn't come up often at all, but want to mention households cannot have financial interest in the development and can't be considered a related party. So if you know the developer or the leasing office, you would need to keep that in mind that you might not be eligible for the lottery. Excuse me. All right, sorry about that. All right, to circle back to the first eligibility criteria to explain some more. So income and assets of the household. So these are affordable units. They're being made available at prices lower than the market rate units within the community. Excuse me for one. Sorry about that. All right, so the maximum income limits are set by household size. So this includes everyone who'll be living in your unit. Again, they're listed on page 4 of the information packet, and they're also listed on your screen right now. But so there's no need to write them down. You have them there. But these are the amounts that you would, and again, they're updated every April by HUD. But if your household exceeds these amounts, you may not be eligible for this opportunity. So all households are going to be required to submit supporting income, asset, and tax documentation. And the required documents vary a little bit depending on your household source of income. But for all households, you will need a copy of your federal tax returns for the last year and copies of any bank statements for the last 3 months. Section 2 of the application is really detailed and lists all the information that you would need in order to verify specific income sources. So for example, if you're employed, how many pay stubs we would need from you and all of that. So also going to give you a basic overview of how your income is going to be calculated. So income for this affordable housing program is counted as a projection of your income over the next 12 months for all household members. So all income from all household members is included. This includes bonuses and overtime, for example. The only exceptions are income from minors. So anyone under the age of 18 that's working in your household, we're not going to count those wages. And for dependent full-time students who are working, we would only count up to $480 per year when determining your income eligibility. We are required to count the gross income, not net, so your income before taxes. Although obviously if you're employed, we know that you don't take home your full salary, but it is required to be used for purposes of determining your eligibility. We recognize that everybody's income circumstances are unique. So while some applicants might have a consistent weekly salary throughout the year, others are self-employed or working seasonally. So in those circumstances, we might need to look further back into the past in order to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months. And then specifically for households who are self-employed, you will need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation. There is a template and a sample profit and loss statement at the end of the application if you need that. Your business expenses will be considered if you're self-employed, but if you are a household who doesn't have any self-employed members, we are going to need to count your gross income when determining your eligibility. So in general, any income you have been making, we're going to assume that you're going to continue to be making it going forward, unless we have some sort of definitive documentation stating that you're no longer going to be earning that income source. So for example, if you have a written letter from your employer that's stating over the next year, bonuses and overtime are not going to be paid out at all, we might be able to consider that. And if you had bonus or overtime income for the last year, we would exclude it. We're not permitted, though, to accept statements from applicants. So if all the documentation that we have on file is showing that you made $80,000 last year, but an applicant is saying, I plan to work far less hours in the next year, I'm only going to be making $60,000. We would still need to count that $80,000 that we have verification of, unless there's some sort of written statement from an employer, for example, that we would need to consider. There's a table on the application that lists all of the types of income sources that you want to keep in mind, but just to give you an idea of those so you don't overlook any income that's coming into your household, we're looking for you to report, wages, whether or not they're self-employment wages or wages from an employer, Social Security, SSDI benefits, child support benefits, alimony, retirement distributions, unemployment compensation, workman's compensation, any pension contributions that you have coming in, even periodic payments from friends or family. If you have someone who is contributing to your household on a regular basis, you're going to want to have a written statement from them. And then any assets that are generating income as well. So there's no minimum income thresholds for the affordable housing program. However, most management teams, including the team at Ezio Place, wants to be sure that all tenants can afford the rent. So regardless of whether or not the unit is market rate or affordable, the management company has set a minimum household income equivalent to 2.5 times the monthly rent. Those minimum amounts are listed in the income pack as well. But to give you an example, for households looking to rent a 1-bedroom apartment at Ezio Place, the approximate minimum household income is $61,500, whereas for a 2-bedroom, it's $68,350. If you're looking to rent a 3-bedroom apartment, your total household income would need to be $74,800 or higher. If you have a mobile housing voucher, you can disregard the minimum amounts that I just mentioned because they don't apply to you. But any applicant who doesn't have a housing voucher, you want to still check in with your housing agency, the agency that issues your voucher, to confirm that the rents are within the agency's payment standards or the maximum rents for the program that you have the voucher through. The leasing office at Ezio Place will eventually also confirm with your housing authority or agency that the rents are permissible with your voucher, but it's going to be best for you to know sooner rather than later if the rents will work with your voucher. Applicants without a voucher, you need to have an income between the minimum income floor that I just mentioned and the maximum income limits that are part of the program. The only exception to this is households with incomes just below the minimum income amount. If a household is close to the minimum income, but has liquid assets that they may be able to access to afford the rent, your application may be considered by the leasing office. So the minimum income amounts are not as strictly enforced as the income limits that are a program requirement. So ultimately, it's the decision of the management or leasing office during the lease screening whether or not a household meets those minimum income amounts that I just mentioned. There's no asset limit for rental opportunities. So households, applicants can have significant asset amounts. Some people might be retired with a lot of assets sitting in the bank. We will still need to collect the information related to your assets, although there is no asset limit. And the reason for that is because if there's income being generated from those assets, we will need to count it towards your total household income to confirm your eligibility for the program. So when you're thinking about assets and what you need to write down in your application, this could include not only just checking and savings accounts and CDs and that type of account that you think of when you think of the word asset, but also the net cash value of any 401ks or IRAs. We'll also be asking if you have money in a Venmo or PayPal account, that sort of thing. We will need the statement just as if it were a normal bank account through a bank. Stocks, bonds. We do not need documents related to personal assets such as your car, jewelry, art, that sort of thing. All right, any questions on eligibility until I'm going to move on to the lottery itself, if not. All right. Oh, Shalisa, looks like you might have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, so I know you were saying that the eligibility is anything under, for me, it's a one-person household, which is 78,000. So if anybody makes below that, you said that there's a voucher available?
No, I'm saying that if you, those are the maximum income limits, and then there's a minimum income amount that you would need to make in order for the leasing office to approve your lease application with them. And so I was saying, I mentioned the vouchers because the minimum income amount doesn't apply to voucher holders, because any voucher holder will have a portion of their rent paid for by the voucher itself.
Okay, and also, do you know anything about how to go about getting those vouchers?
So, I mean, in my experience, vouchers getting a Section 8 voucher, for example, could be a waiting list several years long, sometimes more than 10 years in some agents, in some areas. But yeah, I mean, you want to contact like your local housing authority. Most towns in Massachusetts have a housing authority or a local regional agency that would be able to get you on a wait list. Again, it's just, they're very long lists at this point.
I see. I can imagine.
Yep. Yeah. Anything else?
Not right now.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to move on to lottery eligibility. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're interested, go ahead and get your application in as early as possible just to get the process started. We do want to mention too that you can apply for more than one unit size. So if you think you might be interested, for example, in a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom, you should indicate that on your application. There's no downside to doing so, but there is a potential downside if you only apply to 1 unit size and then later on decide you might be interested in the 2-bedroom as well, because you know, the units might be taken by households who applied and were in the lottery for that larger bedroom size. So if you're interested in more than 1 bedroom size, just want to throw it out there, you're able to apply for more than one. So you get your lottery application in, we're going to review the application and contact you if you have any missing information or if anything appears to be incorrect. So then you'll have the chance to correct it and resubmit as necessary. Most applicants do not have a 100% complete application on the first try. There's a couple reasons for that. The first being just that there's a lot of information that's required to be sent in. And the second is because even if you do submit everything that we need, sometimes when we're reviewing the application, the documentation that you have submitted prompts further questions from us. So you might submit a bank statement and there's a deposit that we need to know more about. Pay stubs might have some sort of deduction that we need to know about, that sort of thing. And that's completely fine. If you need a couple tries to be able to get that information into us, we will always give you additional time to get that in. So again, that's just part of the reason that we encourage you to get it in, get that application in early in the process so we can begin review. So if you're found eligible for the lottery, you're going to be sent a lottery application number in the form of a series of numbers. So that will be the number drawn in the lottery. It's just meant to be an anonymous identifier, so your name isn't called during the lottery itself. So it's not a ranking of any sort. It just corresponds with the order in which we receive your application. So the first person to submit a completed application for Ezio Place, their lottery number is going to be A.001. The letter that you get with your lottery number is also going to confirm whether your household qualifies for local preference. You will have indicated on your lottery application if you believe that your household qualifies for this preference. And the necessary verification would have been submitted along with your application. Local preference might apply to your household if you live in Peabody, you work for the city, you work for a business located within Peabody, or if you or you're a guardian of a child who is attending public schools in Peabody. So up to 70% of the affordable units at Ezio Place are going to have that local preference, which means that some local preference households will have priority for those units over households who do not qualify for local preference. But you also want to keep in mind that for 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units, household type is going to be more heavily weighted as a factor on the waiting list. So what that means is, for example, if you're a type 2 household and you're applying for a 2-bedroom unit, you're going to have priority over any type 1 smaller households that are local preference. So in short, you do not have to have local preference. You shouldn't be deterred at all from applying. And there's a lot more information on local preference and how we go about determining it and that sort of thing on page 17 of the info pack. And then finally, in that email or letter that will be confirming your lottery application number, it's also going to confirm the bedroom sizes that you applied for, as well as whether or not you were in need of one of the disabled accessible units. So if at any point during the process that we're reviewing your application, if you're told that you are ineligible for the lottery, maybe you're over income or you own a home, whatever it might be, you're going to be informed by email. And we encourage you to contact us with any questions. If you think maybe we calculated something incorrectly, or if you just don't understand how we calculated it, we encourage you to reach out to us. So the lottery itself is going to be held virtually in the same manner. So it'll be over Zoom on January 11th at 6 p.m. So after the holidays. It's going to be in the same format, like I said. I'm going to have a box, though. I'll have a lottery box next to me, and I will just be drawing numbers from the box. I'll hold them up to the screen, and it will be recorded just as this is being recorded. During the lottery, every lottery number is going to be drawn. Sometimes when we think of lotteries, we think there's just one winner, or in this case, one winner per unit, but that isn't the case here. The lottery is really just held in order for us to be able to establish the waiting list for each of these units. So for example, if a type 1 household is drawn first in the lottery, they're not going to be first on the 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom waiting list. They're going to be behind all of the larger households on the waiting list. So in general, if you're tuning into the lottery, it is more beneficial if your number is drawn first or early on, but it's not necessarily the deciding factor on whether or not you'll be moving forward in the process to lease a unit. And then all households who are entered into the lottery could also be found ineligible by the leasing office, or might ultimately decide not to rent a unit. So if your number is drawn later in the lottery, you shouldn't lose hope at being able to move into one of these apartments. You still could have the opportunity to move forward because, like I said, people drop off the waiting list, you might move up, that sort of thing. So following the lottery, we'll immediately start populating the waiting list. We're going to be taking household type, local preference, and whether or not your household requires an accessible apartment into consideration. We're going to do our best to send the waiting list to all households as soon as possible, usually no later than the following morning after the lottery. So you don't need to tune into the lottery because you may not know exactly where you stand anyway, and you can expect an email from us the following day with the results. When you receive that email, you can find your lottery application number on the waiting list, and at that point, you'll have a better idea of whether or not you'll be invited to move forward to apply for a lease with the leasing office, which is the next step in the process. So at that time, following the lottery and the establishment of the waiting list, we're going to connect the top households from each waiting list with the management team, so with the leasing office, and your contact information will be provided to them, and vice versa. We'll give them your contact information so you can go ahead and start to apply for the lease. So at this point, SCB Housing has already completed the lottery and your program eligibility screening. We haven't screened you for lease eligibility, though. The management company is going to do that. I mentioned it earlier too, that usually the screening is very similar to maybe screenings that you've gone through for other apartments. They'll be checking credit, rental history, background check, that sort of thing, to determine if you're eligible to rent with them. And then just be aware too that management companies often are inviting more households to complete a lease screening than there are available units. So for example, at Ezio Place, there is only one 3-bedroom affordable unit, but it's possible that 3 or more households will be invited from the waiting list to complete a lease screening. And this is common practice for management companies because oftentimes the leasing process is bogged down with households who maybe don't qualify or who don't follow through with the process. So just be aware of that. So even if you're the first person on the waiting list, you don't want to immediately give notice to your current landlord if you're currently renting, because you haven't at that point been approved for by the management company for the lease. So wait until the end to make sure that you've secured a unit, you've reserved something with them, and all of that before giving notice to your current property owner. And so this is really the point in the process that after the lottery, if you have a favorable position near the top of the waiting list, it's going to be beneficial for you because you will be the top person, the top household on the list, and you'll have first chance at reserving an affordable unit. So if you have that top position on the 1-bedroom waiting list, for example, you'll have the first choice at the affordable 1-bedroom apartment. So this is true even if another applicant who is behind you on the waiting list happens to complete their lease eligibility information with the leasing office before you do. If you're the waiting list order is always going to be honored. So you'll be able to tour the unit, make your decision as to which location in the building or which apartment is most desirable to you. And then the second household on the waiting list is going to have the second choice, and so forth. I wish I had a definitive answer for you as to whether or not the units were currently available for touring. I believe they are. I just didn't hear back from the leasing office today. I believe they're available for touring now, and you could see the property and its amenities if you were interested in doing so before applying even. So once leased, you would be done with screenings, income screenings, all that sort of thing until your next lease renewal date. So at that point, 1 year on, we hope that you have enjoyed your time living at Ezio Place and you want to renew your lease. If you do, you're going to need to recertify your income with either SCB Housing or the management office prior to signing your lease renewal paperwork. If during the year your income has increased and you're now above that 80% of area median income, that's fine. Households remain eligible for the affordable apartments as long as your income has not increased over 140% of the area median income. So page 16 of the information packet has a lot more information about that. But to give you an example, a household of 2 would have had to qualify for this lottery with an income at or below $89,500. That same household can make up to $125,300 at the time of their recertification next year in order to remain eligible for the affordable apartment. So a decent jump there for your family to still be eligible for the apartment in the coming years. So that about covers what I wanted to mention from the information packet. Like I said, I think the units are available now for touring and the property itself if you wanted to have a look at it. If you haven't already, go onto our website. The information packet is there, as well as the application itself for you. It's a PDF. They're both PDF forms, so you can go ahead and download it or print it or whatever you need to do. And I'll stick around for another couple minutes in case you think of any questions. Now's the time to ask. And if you think of anything after tonight as well, just a reminder that info@scbhousing.com is the best email address to contact us at. All right, if there's no questions, then again, just encourage you to get your application in as soon as possible so we can start working with you to make sure it's complete. And thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.